Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Aligned Health Center. Aligned Health Center is the first chiropractic biophysics clinic in Northern Ohio. The team at Aligned Health Center, they're just the best. They help patients with back pain, neck pain, migraines, ADHD, digestive issues, sleep disturbance, whiplash, scoliosis, and much more. And along with chiropractic biophysics, Aligned Health Center is also the leading clinic in regenerative medicine. You may have heard of it as stem cell injections. And listen, you don't have to be an NBA player to get this done or have this treatment or to get checked out. If you have low back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, arthritis, check out the Regenerative Medicine Clinic at Aligned Health Center. Come in for a free consultation, get some imaging done and x-rays to see how Aligned Health Center can help you. There are no multiple shots and is complete with physical therapy built into the process, so there's no downtime. And look, this gets even better. Aligned Health Center doesn't charge people for x-rays or exams. They just don't. They don't bill you later either. They let you know right up front, right away, how much it's going to cost, and they're transparent about the process. They are number one for a reason. So call Aligned Health Center today. What's it going to hurt? 440-385-7357 or visit their website at alignedhealthcenters.com to make an appointment. And also to learn more about how Aligned Health Center can help you. Again, that's alignedhealthcenters.com. Give them a call at 440-385-7357.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
That sound means it's time for Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm your host, Chase Smith, and with me, he's the editor and writer at 48minutes.com, the assistant editor at Outkick.com. He's our Cavs insider, national NBA writer, Sam Amico. Sam, week 18 is in the books. We're in week 19, and it hasn't started pretty.
No.
Rough start for our Cavs, baby.
Yeah, well, it's been a rough few weeks. So
it's been a rough few years.
yeah. You will get no argument from me.
Well, also joining us today, Sam, and this is just a treat, Chrsi Crouse, the editor, co-owner, tweetmaster at 48minutes.com. This is a 48-minute takeover, guys. Chris, welcome to the Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Oh, Chase, thanks for having me.
Hey, I have a timer here. We're trying to go 48 minutes since we have 48 minutes.
I like that. Yeah.
Takeover here. We got the entire 48-minute crew here on Cavs on the Break. And we have to start, Sam and Chris, we have to start talking about Kevin Love. Sam, for those of the Cavs fans who have not been online, living under a rock, or haven't really followed the team because they're so awful, why is Kevin Love trending these past couple of days? Just give us a brief recap of what is going on with Kevin Love and the Cavs.
Well, the quick recap is when the ref threw him the ball under the basket against the Raptors.
We're down 3. Like the Cavs fought back down 3 against the Raptors. Okay, so yeah, I just had to throw that out there.
Yeah, well, right. And then he was upset. There was a very clear shove in his back. I'm not excusing what he did, but he was angry, obviously. And just in the speculation that he's angry about anything that was going on with the team, it was the officiating. But his reaction to that hurt the team more than a technical foul because nobody knew at the time what he was doing, like why he was angry. He slapped the ball in bounds right to the Raptors, walked away, started saying something to the ref. He just lost it. He lost his cool, and we've all done it. But fortunately, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not popular enough to go viral when I lose my cool. And I also try to do it where there aren't cameras around. So, but I mean, at the time, it just seemed like, that's the type of thing that's going to go viral. And we saw JB Bickerstaff and the coaching staff all kind of freak out, like yelling at him, like, what are you doing? He didn't take it. There was no timeout there. He would have been better off taking a technical because at least people would know that he was mad at the refs at the time. So I'll tell you what, I've been covering the NBA really full time now for 14 years. And I've never seen anything like that play.
Chris, Kevin Love is an easy target. He hasn't played a lot. He had a big contract, and from the just come back, start playing, not really what you want to see out of your veterans on your team, Chris.
Yeah, I thought this stretch was going to be sort of like a Chris Paul experiment with Oklahoma
Mm.
City, like a much shorter sample size of that. Yeah, just I'm guessing it hasn't been that. I'm curious to see how many of the remaining 11 games that he plays, and what's going forward. I know Sam, you're much more in tune to what will happen, but yeah, it's from an outsider's view, it's got other people's attention.
Yeah, I would say that it's a big question mark. I couldn't tell you what they're going to do. It sounds like right now a fine. I don't know if there's going to be a suspension or any of that. They keep saying they're going to turn the page, so I'm guessing that's what they'll do.
We're seeing tweets that, well, hey, they had a couple, mishaps with KPJ, and he's traded. Andre Drummond was a little upset about his minutes. He was benched and then bought out. But Kevin Love is just doing this, and it's all gravy. Sam, is it because he has this get out of jail free card because he won a ring and he has earned this with the team? It doesn't seem like he's earned it with the fans. Very unpopular right now with pretty much across the board in all of Cavs Nation.
Well, those other guys were easy to trade, or let go. With him, with his contract, you can't. You're kind of, and I hate to use the word stuck, but that's the way it's kind of playing out right now. He's been injured a lot. He's not been, those injuries have obviously caught up with him. He's averaging career lows in points and rebounds, and I think it's 11 points and 7 rebounds, right in that area since he's come back in the 18 games that he's played. He's got a massive contract. But
he made a nice outlet pass a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, well, I know when I saw that, I just was like, who cares? I mean, outlet passes. Who can? I mean, I know it was a nice pass, but to me, it's just like, come on, outlet passes. That's what we're built. That's what we're hanging our hat on these days. But I did, and I mentioned that in my column after I said, look what Kevin Porter Jr. was. We still don't really know why they sat him out 2 weeks. And Drummond, that situation, I kind of got why, that situation didn't work when they traded for Jared Allen. He was getting upset over his minutes. So I don't think benching him, we've been over this before, I don't think benching Drummond was a smart move by any stretch, but and certainly trading KPJ to me was, I just don't get that, because, he's exactly what they could use right now. But yeah, I don't know. To me, it doesn't seem right that Kevin would only face a fine or a talking to when historically they've really brought the hammer down on these other guys.
And not to beat a dead horse, but the lineup that has the best plus minus for the Cavs this year, we've seen it once: Kevin Love, Andre Drummond, Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, and my boy Okoro. Chris, what do the Cavs have to do? They can't allow this. I mean, they said the official statement is they're taking care of it internally, right? Mm-hmm. But are we just going to move on and forget this happened? I mean, what's the end game here?
I mean, you can't really do too much at the end of the season. I mean, it would be crazy to buy him out with this many years left, but Blake Griffin with 2 years left was just bought out in the middle of the season. Maybe next year is when buyout talks could happen, just based on history of the league and where they are in big contracts like that. But maybe he gets a calf injury, and he's out for another stretch, and it's over.
Yeah, I don't think you can have. I think he's become pretty toxic. I mean, obviously, I don't know anything about the locker room, but I'm just basing us all off of what we see on the court. I don't want Okoro, Garland. I don't want that young. I'd rather them take off Nance and even Chetty, who doesn't give you any problems when he's out there. At least he's trying to play hard. And Kevin Love has been pretty vocal about his struggles with mental health, and I can't imagine how difficult that is, handling the pressures and being in front of thousands and thousands and millions of people with your career. And, I think it's just a very, very complicated situation that just a really, really bad look for the Cavs, for Kevin Love. And, Sam, was just a couple weeks ago, we were talking about maybe a 10 seed and what hope kind of Kevin Love brought as he's coming back from this injury post All-Star break. And this is almost the worst it could have gone, because not only is he providing career low numbers, but he's taking minutes away from people who could be playing and maybe doing better. Sam, this is the worst that could have happened.
Yeah, well, I think he's played 18 games. I don't know what I know they've lost 13 of 17. So, he hasn't really helped them obviously win. And they've had countless injuries to other guys too, in fairness to him. But to me, it's just been it's like you said, it's been the worst case scenario with him coming back, taking minutes away from. They frankly they played a lot better when Larry Nance Jr. was healthy and starting at power forward.
Yep. Well, Chris, Sam, let me give you a couple dates here that I think we need to put in our calendars. June 22nd and July 29th. You want to know why those dates are important?
I'm guessing one of them's the lottery.
June 22nd is the lottery and July 29th is the draft. Guys, it is time to start kind of clearing our calendars, putting that in there and saying, hey, this is going to be an important day for the Cleveland Cavaliers again. The Cavs are 21-40. They're the 13th seed in the East, 6 games out of the 10th seed, the play-in game that we've talked about. There's no way that's going to happen. They were 2-8 the last 10, a 3-game losing streak, and it is time to start talking about the lottery and about the draft and what that looks like. There's no way that we're going to make the play-in game. And even if there was a whatever percentage chance, I think our loss to the Wizards pretty much did us in on Sunday. And we lost to the Raptors on yesterday, Monday as well. So those are all teams that are ranked above us, have better records than us, fighting for that 10th spot. And there's no way that's going to happen. Chris, the Cavs are in the lottery once again. Is like, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting like the same result? Like, how do we get out of this cycle?
I mean, it could be worse. I mean, you look at teams like the Kings and, teams that have been in the lottery, like the Kings is like a dozen straight seasons. And I mean, you guys have titles. You got the draft coming up this weekend. I think there's a lot for Clevelanders to be
Chris was like, talking about the Browns.
Talk
about that. Like, it could be worse. They could not have a good football team. Well, newsflash, this is the first time you've had a good football team in ever
for the Cavs season. But it's still there is some positives here. I think compared to other franchises, it could be a lot worse.
Yeah, that should be the Cavs motto next season. Instead of "Be the fight," it should be "We're not the Kings."
Oh man. Well, we have a couple good pieces. We have Darius Garland. We have Isaac Okoro. We also have Colin Sexton. We have seen flashes of good basketball. Sam, how is this organization going to continue to tell the fans that we're on the right track when obviously their record in play speaks for itself?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, in the history of the franchise, they've won 4 playoff series when LeBron James isn't on the team. That's 50 years of basketball, 4 playoff series wins.
That's a brilliant nugget, Sam.
Yeah,
that is.
I hate to pass it along, but that's the truth. And then. So wait.
So let me just repeat that, because that is amazing. I've never heard that before. So in the 50+ years of the Cleveland Cavaliers basketball organization,
right,
they've only won 4 playoff series without LeBron James in all of their entire.
Well, right, in '92 they won 2 series
in 1 year
to go to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Jordan shot
was 89. They didn't win any series that year, even though
that's right.
Yeah, even though they had finished with the best record in the history of the franchise.
That's right.
That year.
That was right.
And then they obviously won in '76, which is the Miracle of Richfield season.
Fascinating. That's awful.
And then they won they won one in 93, and then lost to the Bulls in the second round. And they haven't, I'm pretty sure, in fact, I'm almost positive every year, and I didn't look this up, but every year that LeBron's not on the team since he's been drafted,
we're in the lottery.
they've played the lottery and gotten a top 5 pick. So yeah, you don't want to become the Sacramento Kings. Now, that said, I'm in agreement with Chris in that you do have, to me, 4 players that you're intending to build the team around in Sexton, Garland, Okoro, and I shouldn't say you're intending, but they're the core, and Jared Allen. And then I didn't
mention him in my list earlier. He's in the list.
Larry Nance Jr.'s in there too. Yeah, I mean, he's not as young as those guys, but he's still young. But I think you still need, even with those guys and seeing their ceilings, or projecting their ceilings, I guess you should say, you're still going to need, that elite kind of guy who is, if not a super duper star, is pretty close to one. And maybe you find that in this draft. I don't know, but I think that you're still seeking that player to kind of be that, if not definite number one, then a 1A, or a guy who's real dynamic. So I think there are some things that are positive about it, but you can't keep saying every year, we're still in a growth period. It takes time. You can't, nobody wants to wait till they're 82 years old to see the team be good again. You look at, like, the Atlanta Hawks, look at the huge step they've taken, because and it's plain and simple. They've added veteran players. They've added Bogdanovich. They've added Gallinari. They added Rondo, got Lou Williams. And the Cavs don't really have that. The kind of Kevin Love's supposed to be that guy.
I think Nance fits that role now too. Like, I would put
Nance
Larry
does
Nance
fit that role, but you also, I think you need like 2 or 3 more as well if you're going to start being like, hey, we want to make the
I think Taurean Prince could do that. Chris, I want to ask you this question, because Sam, a couple episodes ago, we talked about, man, are the Cavs going to start coming out with like phantom injuries? Like, are they really going to just be obviously going towards the draft? I found this tweet from a guy named Evan Damarel. Shouts to Evan, Twitter account, Am Not Evan, a contributor for Forbes Sports. This is what he says. This is who's out for the Cavs next game against the Magic: Colin Sexton, Isaiah Hartenstein, Larry Nance Jr., Taurean Prince, Dylan Windler, Lamar Stevens, and Matthew Dellavedova are out for the Cavs against the Orlando Magic.
It's going to be rough, I guess. Have the Cavs gotten any toe injuries? Because I'm seeing more toe injuries around the league than I've ever seen, and that's one I can relate with. I mean, I could play with that, but I guess because we're in a shortened season and everything like that, and also teams at the end of the season, I don't want to call them tanking teams, because I guess we're not calling them tanking teams anymore, or whatever, pushing towards the bottom of the lottery. I mean, it's going to be, I guess, it's going to be interesting to watch. It's for the basketball purists, but as someone who lived in Philadelphia, went through the process and went through, a roster full of glorified G League players, it can be good. You can find your Robert Covingtons, your TJ McConnells. You can find your guys at the end of the season, and maybe the Cavs will get somebody like that.
The Magic are 18-43. They're the second worst record in the NBA. The Cavs are just 3 games ahead of them. Sam, I just think the Cavs are just all in on the like. That's an incredible list of just not.
Yeah,
awesome
I would
players
say that most of those guys are legitimately hurt. I certainly think, with the concussion things, those are issues. The thing is, Chase, they're not winning anyway. So I don't think they really need to pull guys to make sure they lose. It's not like the Chris Grant era Cavs before LeBron came back. They were pulling guys and coming up with a lot of phantom injuries. I mean, I remember one time Chris Grant was like, oh no, when they won on a last second shot, toward the end of the year. So that
was a good Chris Grant.
Yeah,
I thought he was on the podcast for a moment. I had to like shake my head like, well, no, Chris isn't here. That's Sam.
Yeah, I had a good, strong relationship with Chris. I was sad to see him go, but at any rate, he I don't think Kobe Altman's there. I don't think that he's saying let's pull guys out to try to lose, because the lottery is so different now anyway that you're not really rewarded for finishing with the worst, second, third worst record. You can fall all the way down to, quickly. The odds are stacked now so that it's almost even Steven with the top 8 teams. So, or the worst 8 teams, I guess I should say. So it doesn't really benefit you to finish with the worst record or the second worst record or try to quote unquote tank.
So we have 2 more games in Slate, week 19, the slate of games. Wednesday, the day or list tonight, we play at the Rock. We have 2 home games against the Magic at 7, and then Friday, April 30th, we host the Wizards at the Rock at 7:30. I don't see us winning either of those games. I'm just super down on the Cavs. And
I can tell on your voice and your look,
dude. Yeah. I hate a lack of effort. I hate immaturity. I'm not a fan of veteran players. I think that speaks volumes. And if it's evident on the court, then it's going to be evident at the locker room, at practice. It's going to be evident in the film. Like, it's just, if it's easily,
it's human nature. It's human nature to, you realize that it's another losing season. So you're kind of, and I'm not saying the guys are doing this, but I could tell you, and I think everybody would agree, that it's human nature, no matter what you're doing, when the end is near at your job and you're or at school or whatever, and summer break's coming, you're kind of going through the motions, and that's probably where they are right now, unfortunately.
Protect Isaac Okoro at all costs. That's all I'm saying. I just don't want any bad habits. I think it could be special. We're going to take a quick break and come back. Chrsi Crouse had a great idea to talk about which Cavs team was better, the 2007 finals team or the 2015 finals team without Kevin Love and Kyrie. Stick with us. We're going to talk about it when we get back.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read 1 book a month and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us and then listen in.
It's not a rumor, it's the truth. Regai and Roder are back together again with the R&R podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We're going to talk Browns. We're going to talk Cavs, Indians, even if they're not playing well, which might happen. We're going to talk monsters. We're going to talk college football. You name it. When it comes to sports, Regai and Rhoda, we're going to break it down for you as only we can. So make sure you join us right here on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Want to hear more about your favorite TV shows and movies that are on countless streaming services?
Then listen to Up Next with your new favorite hosts, me, Kristen Aviles,
and me, Christina Walter.
Every other week, we'll highlight one genre, but 2 movies or TV shows, one old and one new.
We'll let you know what's hot and what's not from your favorite
or least favorite
streaming services.
And be sure to stay tuned to the end of each episode where we shout out an artist whose name you should know for their talent in the industry.
So follow us to stay up to date with your favorite hosts from Up Next,
a part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Powell, co-host of the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast. Check us out anywhere you listen to podcasts. For all your Browns coverage, post-game, pre-game, anything you need Browns, you'll find it here on the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast.
Hi, my name is Sam Post, owner of Phenomenal CBD store and PhenomenalCBD.com. That's like phenomenal, CBD.com. Tune in where we talk with experts about how the amazing hemp plant can make a difference for people's health and well-being from the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, it's Tito, host of the Premier Fantasy Podcast. Get all the news and analysis you need to dominate your fantasy league. I've been doing this as long as anybody in the business. I can help give you the edge in your leagues. It's the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
For the Dennis Maniloff Show, I'll tap into my 40-plus years of following Cleveland sports and 30-plus years of writing and talking about them, so as to bring you informed opinions and analysis of your favorite players and teams. I also will monitor the national sports scene and when warranted, step out of the toy department and into the real world. And I'll always be on the lookout for special guests. By all means, join us.
Hey, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. I created this podcast to have hard conversations. Conversations that make us human but are also wildly uncomfortable. Conversations that help give voice to the voiceless and to the marginalized. Now you can listen to the entire first season on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Consider this your personal invitation to join the conversation.
All right, we are back. Cavs on the Break NBA podcast for the Press Play Podcast Network. Sam Amico, Chrsi Crouse. It's a 48-minute takeover, guys. And we have, let me pull this up. We have about 29 minutes to talk about which Cavs team was better. The 2007 Cavs teams that lost in the finals against the Spurs, they got swept in the shortened season strike, or the 2015 Cavs dismembered team with Kevin Love with a torn shoulder. Thank you, Kelly Olynyk. And Kyrie's knee fell apart game one against the Warriors. Chris, what about this debate just like keeps you up at night? Like, I know you're tossing and turning thinking
I'll
about
give you a little
this. We're going to settle it
background
tonight.
how
We're going to
it came
settle it
together.
tonight.
So I'm debating with a friend. He's basically very pro Kyrie Irving and said basically Kyrie won that series in 2016, because LeBron couldn't do it without him, the year before. And I was just like, okay, let's just calm down on that. But he was like, look at the team. Look, you got Dellavedova playing, you got even Shumpert. And I'm like, well, it's still a pretty good team.
Mm-hmm.
But we went back. We were going through the numbers of the 2007 team. And I think that team's a little bit better than it gets like credit for. It's like, like LeBron is pulling G Leaguers to the league. I mean, Agauskas, I was a bit surprised just going back and looking and kind of remembering how well he played and really Drew Gooden there. But I mean, I do think it is the 2015 teams without Kyrie and without Kevin Love, even though they lost in that in that series to the Warriors and didn't lose as badly, I guess. But I mean, I think that both teams are not great, right? Without the two stars. I mean, that was LeBron's first year back, basically putting everything back together.
Yeah. Well, so I think we like our sample size needs to be those 5 games of the finals for that 15 team and the finals for the 2007 team. I think to make it fair, if you do the whole season, I don't know if it really, there is an argument, no matter how good Drew Gooden played or if Z was in his prime, like that doesn't, I don't think a healthy LeBron and healthy Kyrie can almost beat anybody. Sam, you're quiet and looking like you're like thinking deep in thought.
What I'm trying to think of is, let me go through the starters and you guys stop me if I'm wrong. In 2007, so you'd have Zydrunas Ilgauskas versus Timothy Mozgov. Is that right?
Okay. Tristan Thompson, I thought.
Tristan was playing power forward, I'm pretty sure.
Well, can I start him at center?
No, you have to do it right.
Well, I want to start him at center. Why can't we go LeBron, Tristan, Shumpert, Smith, and Delly? Why can't we do that lineup?
Was that the starting lineup? You have to go with the starting line. We'll do benches too. You have
fine.
to do the real stuff.
I don't know that that's better than because Mozgov was like all right, like I think there was a reason why he was starting, and it was they wanted to play a slower pace, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
Fine. We'll play by your rules, Sam. It's a 48-minute takeover. Whatever you guys want.
So Z versus Mozgov, I would have to go with Z in 2007.
Facts.
And then if you look at power forward was Drew Gooden and Tristan Thompson, right? So I would give, they both had their good qualities, but I would probably give the edge to Tristan. Gooden definitely, I shouldn't say definitely, but pretty much better offensive player. Was just very up and down. And Tristan definitely better defensively. I would probably give the edge to Tristan.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
So it's, and then the backcourt, I'm pretty sure the Cavs backcourt was was the starting backcourt Pavlovich and Larry Hughes?
That sounds
or was
right.
it Eric Snow? Or was Eric Snow not
Snow's
on
the starting point guard.
So who else started? Pavlovich came off the bench. Larry Hughes start.
Booby started a couple games.
No, Eric Snow didn't start though. I think it was Daniel Gibson,
Yeah.
Pavlovic, and Larry got 2 starts out of the 4. Oh, Larry and Daniel Gibson each got 2.
Okay.
We're talking about the finals.
Yeah, against the Spurs. So I always thought like Eric Snow was the guy. But like I don't know what happened. I don't know. Maybe they just like
He
ran
couldn't
out of
keep
gas
up with
for him
Tony
coming
Parker.
back.
Tony Parker ran circles around him.
that could have been why they're just like we gotta
super
try something
slow.
else.
And there were a couple of series where Booby had like he caught fire a little bit in like the early part of the playoffs and just went
against
ice
Detroit,
cold.
he had this huge game. I'm going to go. I know Delhi had a great series, or at least a great first 2 games. I'm sorry. I think Booby's a better player. Although once his contract with the Cavs was up, he was out of the league. I mean, he hasn't returned. Chase is giving me a look.
All right, so
and then Larry Hughes versus who was starting for the Cavs? J.R. Smith or Shumpert? J.R. Smith, right?
Yeah. Hey, watch, our Lord and Savior J.R. Smith watches over me in my studio. You got to watch out now. Hey, so let's ask this question: which team was better, the 15 Warriors or the 7 Spurs?
The 7 Spurs.
I know they're different styles.
Ooh.
They're different styles of basketball.
I think the 16 Warriors were the 15 Warriors probably weren't as good as the 07 Spurs. Everybody kind of picked the 2007 Spurs to win the finals, to be the team to beat going into the season. I don't think people were saying that about that Warriors team. That Warriors team really kind of rose up. I would say the Spurs were better.
Would the 2015 Cavs have been swept by the 7 Spurs, Chris? Let's dissect this all the way. We know the 7 Cavs would get swept. That's what happened. Yeah. It wasn't really close at all. It wasn't competitive.
I don't think so, but I think it's because of literally just LeBron. I think LeBron was just so much better that he's not going to get swept at that point in his career. And, because I mean, I believe he should have won Finals MVP in a loss. I know it's hard to get that.
That's undefensible. I don't know. I mean, the only defense is, they won. Well, LeBron averaged like 40, 13, 12, and 8. Like, it was this ridiculous, like, stat line. So ultimately, this conversation does come down to which LeBron is better. Mm-hmm. A 2007 green LeBron or a man's man 15 LeBron. Sam, which LeBron would you take in a series?
Well, I think first of all, let me preface it by saying this: the 2007 LeBron was amazing.
True,
just getting that team to the finals. But to me, the 2015, I mean, just the experience. He had won a couple championships. He'd been to 4 straight finals at that point. That was his 5th straight finals. Yeah. He was just a seasoned player at that point in his career. So I definitely would give 2015 LeBron the edge.
And just remembering back, like that Pistons series, like took everything out of him to beat the entire team. So
yeah.
I wonder if like that was a little bit of it, kind of like running out of gas in the finals, whereas 2015, 2016, and so on with LeBron, like you figure out how to pace yourself through the playoffs and through, even through even just through games, even better now.
Right.
And than it was before. But because I remember being shocked that they were swept, and I'm sure that was the reaction after that.
Chris,
one of
that
the
they
best
were swept.
series.
I wasn't shocked at all. I never felt like we had a chance against Pop, against Duncan, against Ginobili, against Parker. I felt like we're going to get swept.
Here's the real question: who is a better coach, Mike Brown or David Blatt?
David Blatt.
You think?
Yes.
I'm not so sure. I went through this before the podcast. I was sitting around drinking a diet root beer and just thinking of this stuff. And I thought, I don't know. Hey, Mike Brown team really defended well. You know?
Yeah, I think that I had a glimmer of hope in 15, seeing how Delhi could get just annoy Steph, trying to watch these Warriors overcome this. They finally got past the Clippers and they had a miraculous win against, the Thunder. Like, hey, can a jump shot shooting team win the finals? Seeing LeBron figure it out. I feel like that was one of I feel like Miami LeBron is ultra unassailable, the best LeBron. It was a mixture of what we see now with his youth. I think 15 LeBron, you really started to see him figure out the next phase of his game to where he's perfected it now. But it was fun to see him figure that out without relying on his sheer speed. Right. Like you really saw him and he almost did it. There are people say that we should have won that series and the Warriors should have won the 16 series. If Kevin Love and Kyrie doesn't get injured, we might have won the 15 championship. I
think that they would have had a great shot if Kyrie and Love were totally healthy. Because that game one, if you remember, went to overtime when Kyrie got hurt or re-injured and couldn't play the rest of the series. But they gave him everything they had in that first game. And I thought if they just steal one there, they'll be in good shape. But I asked on Twitter and all the fans are 2015. I mean, to the T, everybody's saying 2015.
But not Sam.
I don't remember the benches that well. I really don't. I remember either Shumpert must have come off the bench, right? In that 20, or was he starting? I can't remember. And then JR was.
Yeah, James Jones got 15 minutes per playoff game. Mike Miller, 7 minutes. Sean Marion, 4. I mean, then it was just like Kendrick Perkins. They signed him late as like a intimidator or whatever. But yeah, the Brown averaged 42 minutes per game of the playoffs. Jeez. Tristan, 36. Shumpert 34, JR 31. Those are a lot of minutes. Mozgov 26, Delhi 24. And then for the 6 and 7, my computer just froze.
Yeah, because I think that Cavs team had the same problem that LeBron's first Miami team had, that they really couldn't fill out 7 through 12 on the roster the same way that a typical team would. You're signing Mike Miller at 34. You got James Jones at 34. You got Kendrick Perkins and I don't know.
Guys, the Brown averaged 44 minutes in 2006 in the finals. Larry Hughes got 35 minutes. Dude, there's no way that team was better than the 15 team. I'm sorry. If Larry Hughes is getting 35 minutes, I
liked Larry Hughes. My only issue with Larry Hughes was it was very evident. There were times he would come down the court. He was playing point sometimes, and he would come down the court. And actually, I think he was playing point, and they had Booby playing shooting guard is how that worked. But there were times during the regular season anyway, you would see Larry Hughes come down the court and his thought process was, okay, it's my turn to shoot.
Yeah.
And if it was 1-on-4, he would put up a shot sometimes, but he was a very underrated defender, and a decent athlete,
Yeah. I think 2015 was the best LeBron. I think Z is the second best player on those teams, but then I think everyone else, Drew Gooden had 30 points. Not 30 points, 30 minutes per game.
Yeah, Drew Gooden wasn't a bad player. I think he and Tristan were both number 4 overall picks too. And I'll tell you this, those two guys are probably 2 of my top, if not 5, top 10 for sure guys that I've ever covered and dealt with. One time I wrote a story on Drew Gooden, a feature on him, and he came up to me a week later. I saw him after or before a game, and he said, "Hey, thanks a lot for that feature. My mom has it posted on her fridge. She printed it off and posted on her fridge." And I said, wow, never thought that an NBA player's mom would be posting stories on the fridge. But
I heard he used that in a bargaining chip to get more money, Sam.
Well, I'd like to see a cut of that if it's true.
No, I don't know. So, all right, Chris, what is your final answer? Which team was better, the 2007 Cavs or the 2015 Kyrie Loveless Cavs?
I really think that LeBron, just the difference, that in his game makes the majority of it. I still think, I agree with everything you guys the conclusion you guys came to as well. Basically, it is a better supporting cast. It's just a little closer than I thought it was going to be, going through everything. And I guess my final take is just that, the end of that roster, when Mike Miller and James Jones playing, in the finals, and, it's not ideal.
Yeah. Sean Livingston tore us up. That's for sure. Our second unit wasn't very good.
Iguodala and Livingston were killers. I thought that they did a nice job on, as well as they could, on, Curry and Klay Thompson and a much younger and more impactful Draymond. But they just had no answer for those other older veteran guys and Livingston and Iguodala.
Chris, what was your answer? Sorry, 2015.
Yeah, I'm still going with the 2015 supporting cast, the one that lost to the first Warriors team. I just think the job that LeBron did during that finals is, like, you can argue that might be his best finals. He just he couldn't do it by himself, and nobody can against a team with shooters like the Warriors have, and everything there.
Sam, your answer? I think we all know.
I agree. 2015. And again, it truly was, even though they won the championship the next year, it truly was an inspirational performance, not just from LeBron, but also from Dellavedova, and the way he was able to defend Curry. And
come on, Sam, stay with the 2007 team. Don't fold.
I will say this,
Chris.
Well, 2007 was the first year that I covered the NBA on a full-time basis, and I was just happy to be there. I don't know about the Cavs, but I was just happy to be there.
I relate.
Because, you got all this, you get all this cool final stuff, a lot of stuff I still have, and everything, of course, in the finals isn't run by the Cavs anymore. The Cavs PR is removed pretty much from the equation, and in terms of, credentialing and the kind of stuff you get. I remember getting a 2007 NBA Finals book bag from the NBA. Nice. You see everybody who's anybody in the NBA is there. The commissioner's there. It was just, to me, that was definitely, like, for me, it was like, okay, this is my first year covering the NBA full time, and it's so cool that the team in the city that I live in or nearby is in the final. So, as far as an actual answer to the question, though, I do think 2015. But I'm with Chris. It's not a blowout. It's not an easy thing. I think it's pretty close, because don't forget, 2007 LeBron was a bad dude.
Yeah.
I mean, he was something else. He just didn't have the experience and the seasoning of the 2015 or the championships under his belt.
Yep. Very interesting question, Chris. Thanks for bringing it up. But I would have to say the 2015 Cavs team minus Kyrie and Kevin Love was better than the 2007 team that got swept by the Spurs. I don't think it's fair to say which team was better, Spurs or Warriors. I might say the Spurs were a better team.
I think at that time they were. When you compare them to 2015, I wouldn't say they were better than, to me, they definitely weren't better than the Warriors teams with Durant.
Right.
But I think that, those teams, those Spurs teams in the early 2000s were just powers.
I will say I felt that hopelessness feeling game 3 of pretty much whenever we didn't win game 1 in Golden State in 18, I think. The series was over after that game. Like, that was the series, and I was at game 3 when Durant took over in the third quarter. And was
that the timeout game, the JR timeout?
Yeah, it was I like to call it the George Hill missed free throw game. I don't like to slander J.R. Smith like that, but
JR made the play of the game too. He got the offensive rebound.
It was the George Hill missed free throw game, but yes, it was the timeout game as well.
Yeah.
I felt very hopeless after that we had a shot. That was it. Well, that does it for this episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Thank you all so much for downloading and listening. Shouts to our presenting sponsor, Alliant Health Center. Shouts to the Press Play Podcast Network for making this possible. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Cavs on the Break. We always follow back. Follow Sam on Twitter at Amico Hoops. Get all of his work and writings at 48minutes.com and outkick.com for breaking news, insider info. Do not miss out. Make sure to follow Chrsi Crouse on Twitter at NBA Crouse. He's also at 48minutes.com. 48minutes.com takeover. Check it out. It's great stuff. Make it your homepage. The first thing you open up when you go to the internet, whether you use Chrome, Firefox. Does anyone even use Internet Explorer anymore? I don't think anyone does. They only use it to download. Well,
my mom does. My mom uses it.
That checks out. Checks out. People only use that to download Chrome. But yeah, Sam, any final thoughts, man?
No, I'm just curious if we went 48 minutes.
We are at 41 minutes, and I think after a couple ad reads and play promos, I think we're going to be golden, baby.
Okay, that's it. And I think that as far as the current team goes, it'll be interesting to see where what kind of effort they're giving the rest of the year, because and really what they find out. This is an evaluation period for next season right now, or the off season anyway.
Yeah. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chase. Really appreciate having me on.
Hey, Chris, can you send us out? So how we do this every episode is we have a little clip from Mike Breen that says the Cleveland Cavaliers are NBA champions once again, and we always cue him up. So, Chris, what I need you to do is, with as much gusto and energy as you can, say, Mike Breen, take us out, and howl like a goober if you could.
Mike Breen, take us out.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.